What's up, fishy friends? Welcome to Tim's School of Fish and Class in session. Today, I want to tell you why I also love traditional knives and not just modern folders. So, first of all, let's define the difference between the two. A modern folder can typically be manipulated with one hand. There's a one-hand opening, and there's typically some sort of locking mechanism. So what is a traditional knife? For me, a traditional folding knife is one that requires two hands to open, and there is no locking mechanism. So today I want to talk about why I love traditional folding knives and why you should too. So let's get this camera turned around. Let's take a look at some knives and talk about it. All right, one other thing that I forgot to mention that defines a modern or tactical knife versus a traditional knife, in my opinion, is the presence of a pocket clip. Almost every single modern folding knife that I own has a pocket clip. Traditional knives, on the other hand, do not. I really want to give you three reasons why I love traditional knives and why you should too. Now, I love modern folders. I do. I love modern knives. I enjoy collecting them, but they don't hold the exact same appeal to me as traditional knives do. Number one is history and tradition. Most traditional knives are made based on what we call a pattern, a certain pattern. And those knives were developed for specific people that have specific trades. For example, if you were a gardener, you would have carried something like this Taylor's Eyewitness peach pruner. So this particular pattern was made for specific people that do a specific trade. Something like this, on the other hand, would have been made for someone that is a hunter that's doing some skinning, right? Something like that. I don't have one here on the table, but a stockman knife would have been a knife that had 3 blades on it specifically for somebody that works in a stockyard with cattle. So yes, modern knives are made sort of with a purpose in mind, but not completely. And what I mean by that is certain blade shapes are going to be better for certain tasks than other blade shapes. This knife is not really designed for a specific person in mind. Now, if you use a modern folder for your job and you lay carpet, this probably wouldn't be the best choice for you. For cutting carpet and scoring carpet and doing coping type cuts, this might be a better choice. So there's that. The traditional patterns and the fact that all these old knives were made for a specific person. And the other part of that goes along with tradition is history. These old knives have stories to tell. And if you get an old knife from a thrift store, like this one, this is an old Providence Cutlery Company knife. This knife was made probably in the 50s. So there are all kinds of stories in this particular knife. Was it bought at a gas station? Was it bought at a hardware store? It probably was. This could have been a boy's very first knife. Maybe he carried it his whole life. Who knows? I don't know the particular story behind this knife. This knife, I do know the particular story behind. This is a case knife that belonged to my stepfather, who was more of my father than my actual father. This was his knife. This knife is a 6265 folding hunter. This particular one was made between 1940 and 1964. I believe this one is from the late 50s or early 60s. This knife helped build a general store that provided for an entire small community in the country. This knife opened an Amazon package. This knife worked on a farm that grew peanuts and cotton, and those peanuts and that cotton could have gone on to feed and clothe countless people. This knife cut a zip tie. I know it doesn't look like it because I think one of his grandsons tried to sand the patina off. You can see the marks there where they tried to do that. But this is an old knife. This has stories behind it. These old traditional knives were made with a purpose. They have stories to tell. And the other thing that sort of goes along with that history and tradition is today, when a man carries a pocket knife, it's generally because he's regarded as an EDC guy. A man in the past carried a pocket knife not because he was an EDC guy, but because he was a man. That simple. And nobody questioned that, right? There was no stigma around pocket knives like there are today, right? Some people, I mean, I'm not. I've grown up around knives in the Deep South my whole life, and boys have pocket knives from a very young age, and it's just a given that every man has a knife. You don't even have to ask. Just assume that every man where I live is carrying a pocket knife, and part of that is because it's tradition. That tradition still carries over to where a man carried a knife not because he was an EDC guy, but because he was a man. And it just wasn't questioned. And so I love all of those things about traditional knives. The history, the tradition, the traditional patterns, the stories they have to tell. Number two, the second reason is because traditional folding knives are very deliberate. Did you know that the average attention span of humans today is 8.2 seconds? And the average attention span of a goldfish is 9 seconds. Now, I don't know where these stats came from, but I believe it. Here's proof of that. TikTok, YouTube Shorts, they are wildly popular. They get far more views than these type of long form videos. And it's because most of them, all of them are under 60 seconds, but the ones that perform the best are no more than 10 seconds long. It's because people do not have an attention span. You know, they have less of an attention span than a goldfish. I like traditional knives because they are very deliberate. I like them because it takes two hands to open, because it requires a certain amount of attention. Very deliberate. Okay? This, not deliberate at all, right? There's nothing deliberate about that. I like that they are deliberate and they harken back to a time when things moved more slowly, right? When life was more deliberate and people paid attention to what was going on around them instead of just blindly going about their day, fidgeting along. The third reason why I love traditional folding knives is that they are affordable and functional. The price of modern folding knives has gotten way out of hand. This knife was $300. This knife was $300. This knife, $200. This knife, what is this? $300, $400. Now you can get knives for $800, $1,000, $12, and there's nothing wrong with that. Look, if that's what you want to collect, then that's great. Those particular knives that I just showed that cost $300 to $400 are because they're made with premium materials and premium steels, right? But do we really need that premium steel? Do I really need S110V or S90V or 20CV? I don't think so, right? I don't think that the average person needs super steels. These knives that were made out of carbon steel and 440 steel and D2 steel functioned just as well as these other knives that have high-end steels, right? I believe that a lot of the cost of modern folders is because of the steel. And here's an example. This is called the Vosteed Nightshade. There's a mini version of this Vosteed Nightshade. It was very popular. It sold out really quick. You could not get the Vosteed Mini Nightshade for a long time. I got an email today that said, yay, Vosteed Mini Nightshades are back in stock. Now, the Vosteed Mini Nightshade before, when they ran out, was 14C 28N steel, which is perfectly good steel that anybody, you know, it will function perfectly well for anybody and everybody. 14C 28N is a perfectly good steel. And the Mini Nightshade that had the 14C 28N that they ran out of was $59. 59 bucks. Now, the ones that they just released back in stock have S35VN and they're $99. $40 more. They didn't make any with the 14C 28N. They said, let's put S35VN on it and we can charge $100 instead of $50. And they're going to sell out. They're going to sell out. But I contend that your knife with 14C 28N would perform just as well as it would with S35VN because of what most people use their knives for, which is opening an Amazon box, cutting a zip tie, breaking down some cardboard, right? I'm not talking about if you're a tradesman, if you hang drywall, or if you're an HVAC guy, or if you're a plumber. Sure, right? If you have a profession where your knives get tons of hard use, some of those higher end steels are better, right? And you can beat the heck out of them and they're going to hold an edge longer. But most of those higher end steels, the main benefit of most of them is edge retention. They hold their edge longer than something like this or something like this. These are going to go dull much quicker. But the problem with those steels, those super steels that hold their edge much longer, they're impossible to sharpen. This is going to go dull a lot faster, but you take this home at the end of the day and you strop it up and it's good to go again, right? So there's that. These traditional knives are affordable, right? So if you're not into the old grandpa style knives, and they still make these grandpa style knives, if you're not into that, then you can look at some of these modern takes on traditional folders, right? That it's still a traditional folder because it doesn't have a lock, it doesn't have a pocket clip, it takes two hands to open, but it's made with modern material. This is a modern interpretation of a traditional pattern, and I think it freaking looks amazing. And it performs amazingly well. And while D2 doesn't offer the best corrosion resistance in the world, it's easy to sharpen. It holds its edge, right, fairly well. So if you're not into the old, truly traditional style patterns, look at some of these modern interpretations of traditional patterns. This is a great 5th pocket knife, or a great everyday carry. Or maybe you live in a state or a country where they have knife laws where you can't have a blade over 3 inches. A lot of traditional knives are going to be acceptable, right? Some of these more modern knives, these more modern takes on traditional knives are getting more expensive, but for the most part, you can still find traditional slip joints for $100 or less. It's getting to the point with modern knives that almost everything costs $100 or more, right? We were at 30, then at 50, then at 75. Now we're pushing $100 just to get anything. So if these don't work for you, right? If that's a little too old-fashioned for you, look at some of these modern takes on modern slip joints. I think that you might enjoy them. So that's my long ramble on why I love traditional folding knives. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. Let me know down in the comments what you agree with, what you disagree with. Let me know if I'm crazy. Maybe I am. As always, I appreciate you guys for watching. I appreciate you giving me a thumbs up and supporting the channel. Leave me a comment. I enjoy talking to you guys in the comments. Let me know what you think. That's it for this episode of Tim's School of Fish, boys and girls. Class dismissed.